Each week at this time, this is becoming kind of a tradition in Oasis communities around the country. It's a little thing we call a community moment. It started out originally as a chance for people to get up and talk about their journey to free thought, and then after a while that got boring because it sounded the same thing every week, so we kind of branched out, and you can still do that if you want, but it's also a time to share, really, it's kind of a brief secular thought for the day, which lasts 10 minutes or less. Okay, you're slipping on me. Okay, do not forget this. Okay. So we've had so many great community moments, and if you'd like to give a community moment, we'd love to have you, sign up. Just get with me, and I'll get you on the calendar. Today we have a veteran community moment and main talk presenter, and in addition to being a wonderful human being, she's also doing her part to spread secularism by bringing a new secular baby into the world pretty soon. I guess actually all babies are secular when you think about it. They start out that way. So anyway, yeah, let's give a warm welcome to Laura Whittenton.
I'm just going to talk today about the overvaluing of breastfeeding and some of the harm that can inflict. And this is, I recently read this book, Push Back, Guilt in the Age of Natural Parenting. I first heard this author talk on Point of Inquiry. Her name's Amy Tudor. She's a OBGYN with decades of experience, and she talks about the origins of the natural parenting movement and how pseudoscience has kind of started to worm its way into even some of the medical advice that women are given when they're expecting a child. And I'm going to start with saying, I'm not a doctor. Don't take any advice from me. Don't listen to this talk and then go out and make your medical decisions. I advise all of you to talk to your individual doctors when it comes to making healthcare choices. I'm just going to point out some of the bias based on poor interpretation of scientific studies that results in the vilification of mothers using formula at all. Instead of encouraging women to consider their situation, weigh the pros and cons of their options, and then make the decision that is best for them, a one-size-fits-all approach that overvalues breastfeeding is forced onto many women. And this was actually an article on a parenting blog I found. Is formula worse than smoking? Spoiler, it's not. So what are some of the reasons women are told to exclusively breastfeed? Breastfeeding protects infants from disease and prevents illnesses later in life. This is half true and half false. There are a lot of studies on breastfeeding. Studies have been able to solidly confirm that while you are breastfeeding, your child is less likely to suffer from an ear infection or a stomach virus. But the rest of the claims, like the fact that breastfeeding prevents asthma or diabetes, obesity, and increases your child's IQ, are still up for debate and require further research. And one problem with this is the method of study. You cannot simply compare the health of all breastfed children to all bottle-fed children because low-income women are less likely to breastfeed. And children from poorer families have less access to good health care and optimal nutrition, which skew the studies in favor of breastfeeding. In the same way, genetics are often not taken into account. So before taking a study that suggests breastfeeding prevents diabetes, find out whether or not the researchers controlled for the fact that some babies they studied came from families with a history of diabetes and some did not. Really, the best way to study the effects of breastfeeding without the biases of genetics or socioeconomic status is to look at children within the same family, one that was breastfed, one that was bottle-fed. And a lot of studies just don't do this. A misconception about breast milk that's an example of basing this information on a bad study that's been shared far and wide is the idea that I'm actually too big to get close to the podium now, so. Okay, that's better. That has been shared far and wide is the idea that if your baby is sick, your breast milk will literally provide the cure. And this is based on a study by Katie Hindy of the Center for Evolution and Social Change at the Arizona State University that is often cited as proving that if your baby is sick, it will communicate this to the mother through spit backwash. Then mom will make the specific antibodies for that virus and pass it on to the child through breastfeeding the next time it's fed. And there's a nugget of truth in this. Hindy's study did find that yes, when a breastfeeding baby has a specific virus, the antibodies to that virus do show up in the mother's breast milk. But the idea that the baby's spitting into the mother's breast to tell mom this was not based on any proof, but just her own guess. She also did not consider that mom might be producing these antibodies just as a result of being close to a sick baby, and that other members of the family, like the dad, might have the same antibodies in their system. She also did not consider that these antibodies would be present in other bodily fluids. And there was no proof that the baby even benefited from consuming this milk because there was no examination of whether or not they were absorbed correctly and whether or not it affected how long it took the child to get well. So imagine if you and I had the same cold and I said, hey, I've already produced the antibodies for this virus. Would you like for me to spit in your drink and pass them along to you? And you're already skeptical that that would work, and now you're just kind of grossed out. Breastfeeding is cheaper, sort of. Really depends on a woman's situation. It's cheaper for some women. If you're a mother from a higher income family who doesn't have to work, gets a generous paid maternity leave, or whose job provides the facilities for you to pump and store breast milk, it is cheaper. Incidentally, all of the stock photos I found depicting a woman pumping in the workplace were of white women in office situations. However, if you're a mother who does not get maternity leave, or you work in an environment where you aren't provided with the private area to pump at a fridge to store breast milk, it is more cost effective for your family to switch to formula than for you to stay home to breastfeed. I have a workplace that will provide me with privacy and a place to store milk, but I get paid by the hour, and I would have to clock out twice a day. So the money I would save breastfeeding is less than the money I would make in that time. And breastfeeding itself is not 100% free. There are still items marketed to women who breastfeed: bras, covers, special clothes, nipple pads, supplements, and plus if you pump, you still have to buy the storage bags and the bottles to store the milk. There is no good reason a woman can't breastfeed. This is 100% false. 5% of women do not produce enough breast milk to adequately feed their baby and are going to need to supplement with formula. It's just, you can't really do anything to make the milk glands produce more milk any more than you can do something to make a diabetic pancreas produce more insulin. It just doesn't happen. Some infants will not be able to get the right latch for an effective breastfeeding, and their hunger will never be completely satisfied by breastfeeding alone. And the wrong latch can also make the process painful for mom. And then you also have to consider mom's health issues. Many women have health conditions that are going to interfere with breastfeeding, like being a breast cancer survivor, having HIV or AIDS, postpartum depression, anemia. Maybe they're having to take a prescription drug that's going to leach through into breast milk. So, what kind of damage can overvaluing breastfeeding do? It can actually be harmful to babies. In the 19% of American hospitals that follow the Baby-Friendly Hospital Initiative, formula is withheld from newborns who have not yet established a breastfeeding relationship. And this results in newborns going hungry unnecessarily and can even result in dehydration. This is a cruel practice because it puts the process of how the newborn is fed over the child's health and physical comfort. And will that extra ear infection your baby may get because you don't breastfeed potentially cause malnourishment, dehydration, and seizures? No, but withholding formula will. And what is ultimately worse, dehydration or a slightly increased chance of getting an ear infection? And another harm to babies is that mothers who are told to exclusively breastfeed are sometimes hesitant to supplement with formula when your baby isn't putting on enough weight. And the result, again, is an undernourished, constantly hungry baby. And this is also cruel. It can also be harmful to moms. Mothers who aren't producing enough milk or whose baby needs to nurse frequently because they don't latch correctly suffer more than the usual sleep deprivation you're going to have with a newborn. And because of this, they are exhausted to the point where they can't take care of themselves or their infant. And this can also worsen other problems like postpartum depression to the point where the mother's health is in jeopardy. Mothers are also made to feel an incredible amount of shame for not being able to exclusively breastfeed or for ceasing to breastfeed. They're made to feel that they are literally harming their child by using formula, and that instead of deciding to do what's best for them and their baby, they have given up. In my own case, I had one doctor advise me to stop taking a prescription that I needed on a daily basis in order to be a healthy, functional human being and a healthy, functional parent. He did not recommend an alternate form of treatment, and he failed to return the phone messages of the other doctor who had prescribed it. And the reason for halting this medicine was breastfeeding. My doctor put the process of how my child was fed over my overall health. So I switched doctors. But when this kind of advice comes from a place of authority, how many people just follow it? So how does this spread? Well, we all know that science reporting isn't exactly what it should be, and that studies that tout certain things get reported on by people who don't necessarily understand the entire study, and that happens really quickly. But this also happens in hospitals. So last week, I was admitted to the maternity wing at Memorial Hermann for observation, and this poster was in my hospital room, and it presents facts about the benefits of breastfeeding in a vague way in order to scare moms into choosing to exclusively breastfeed. And I know you can't really read it really well, so I just pulled some of the facts off as an example. One example, infants not breastfed are 257% more likely to be hospitalized for a URI. There is no base statistic given for how frequently infants are hospitalized for URIs in the first place, and the poster doesn't even define what a URI is. So, does this mean if I don't breastfeed my baby that it's guaranteed to suffer this fate? You can't tell based on this information alone. Another statistic, or fact. Among mothers who do not breastfeed, there are 4,981 excess cases of breast cancer. Doesn't say if this is every year, every decade, over mom's lifetime. They also don't provide the sample size group of women that they are looking at. So you could be talking about a 0.5% increased chance of getting breast cancer versus a 25% increased chance of getting breast cancer, but you just cannot tell by this information alone. And conveniently, the sources for all of these facts and the studies that they came from are not listed anywhere on the poster. So I'm assuming I'm well out of time, but I'm going to end with this. I'm not sharing these facts to persuade anyone on how to feed their child. Do whatever keeps you and your baby happy and healthy. I'm sharing this because after reading this book, any guilt that someone, whether it's a doctor or someone who just sees me buying formula at the store, tries to inflict on me because of my parenting choices is not going to stick. And I now feel incredibly more confident and at ease in the decisions I've made. And if you're interested in other topics that she covers, like home birth, co-sleeping, and what's really interesting is the anti-feminist and religious origins of the natural parenting movement, that's in here, I highly recommend this book.